It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at Tempestuous Orifice number 5. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, a place for everyone who loves classic RPGs and anyone who'd like to learn more about them. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today from 1984, this is Tempestuous Orifice number 5. Hope you enjoy the video. This week we're continuing our look at the Tempestuous Orifice fanzine. It's produced from the United Kingdom in the early to mid 1980s. Steve Norlich is gone, and so now Chris Davies and Patrick Fama are responsible for producing this fanzine. It's just regular paper, sort of a yellowish color, and paper folded in half, stapled down the side. I think I may have mentioned in one of the earlier fanzines there were 6. There actually are 7 of these, so we've got a couple more to go after today's video. Let's take a look at the cover. We have some new art today. This cover is by a new artist for the fanzine, Rob Nucator. Take a closer look at that art. Some kind of a demon with a staff and casting some kind of a spell, it looks like to me. Cool stuff. All right, so you'll see a lot of stuff is packed into this fanzine. An editorial article on polytheist religion, Herald's College, which is the continuing article from Graham Staplehurst about the Traveler game. Special Patrol Group is a new trap. The Art of the Silent Kill is a little bit of fiction. A Modest Proposal is sort of an editorial. The Enchanted Book of Zan's Banderborn is a D&D campaign. A little bit more commentary on the moral majority. You get these words wrong, that's their letters column. Tuni Peculiar is a little discussion about some the appearance of monsters in comics. Illustrated comics. DMing an AD&D campaign is obviously some suggestions for that. And then Figures Pedantical is a discussion of miniatures. Get myself out of the way here. Chris Davies, Patrick Fama, obviously primarily responsible. TH Zunder, Jon Lewis, Noel Froggatt, David Hulks, who came over from Quasars and Quasars, has some contributions. Graham Staplehurst, Richard Harris, Hudson Shaw, who does some art, and then Rob Nucator, who does the front cover, and Simon Colby, who does the rear cover of this fanzine. First, we have the editorial, and they had a lot to say. The first thing you notice really is the level of enthusiasm, and they mentioned that as well. So this article, or this issue, is out early, at least early for us, they say, in part because they've had so much personal enthusiasm that's been born from the support they've gotten from David Hulks and the people at Quasars and Quasars. That fanzine shut down. He's been sending information, articles, and so forth to them that they can use here. So they've got a lot of information to look at and read through and share in the fanzine. It's not just the two of them putting it together anymore. They mention in here the end of Dragon Lords, Quasars and Quasars, and Wormsclaw, and say they'll be very interested to see how the Games Day Awards for Best Fanzine go, although they kind of are grumbling that they think some people may still, even though those fanzines have folded, may still vote for those old fanzines instead of, for example, them. As they say, they mention they've got a number of articles here coming in from the Quasars and Quasars folks, including David Hulks. And they sort of talk about this difference between hardware and software, and they talk about software articles are like new monsters, new magic items, new traps, and they are not a fan of that, and say they do not intend to publish that in their fanzine. But they do have new traps in here that came from the Quasars and Quasars crew, because they said, look, they already put it together. We wanted to sort of, be polite since they're giving us a bunch of support. So that one thing is in here, and it's actually pretty good, in my opinion. And again, he says, I don't really think we need that kind of stuff in your fanzine. There's, I guess, an adventure's okay. Discussion of how to play the game is okay. And the other thing they mentioned is they're trying to get this out a little early, and also trying to get number 6 out a little early, because they're going to be going off to college, and they want to make sure they'll be focusing on their college. They won't be able to focus so much on this. They're trying to get these issues out ahead of time. And I would guess, since there's only 2 more issues after this, that's probably, as is often the case, why this fanzine is going to fold, right? They're just not going to have the energy and the time to devote to it going forward. Okay, had this little article on the side. They say it's competition time. see if you can figure out what this creature is, and then there is their list of things you can choose from. What do you think the little monster creature is? Is it Brian Dalton, Steve Norridge's sub-editor, Ian Marsh's girlfriend, or Pete Tamlin's wife? I suppose that is their idea of humor. Then this guy named TH Zunder, don't know that might be a pseudonym, but he has an article on polytheist religion, and he says he thinks it's an odd thing. In particular, you get out the Deities and Demigods book, and people tend to pick, say, from the Greek pantheon or the Egyptian pantheon, one particular god that they say their cleric or their character is devoted to. And he says it's really not how human beings have behaved historically, right? He says if you were in Greek culture, you'd pray to the god of earth when you needed crops. You'd pray to the god of, the oceans or the water when you were on a ship going somewhere, and so you would pray to each of those different gods based on what it was that you were praying for. And he sort of suggests people should rethink that in their fantasy campaign, whether it's D&D or something else, and whether it's historical pantheons, something you're getting from the Deities and Demigods book, or something you've made up on your own. There should sort of be this array of gods, and the people that should pick amongst them based on what it is that they need in that particular moment. He thinks that's a lot more realistic. I think there's a similar thing I saw in one of the later books in AD&D 2nd edition in the Forgotten Realms, where they had different deities who actually gave particular bonuses or things that would align with what that particular deity was known for, and maybe even some limitations on things that that deity wouldn't expect you to pray for or use in terms of your spell choices. So that is an interesting article for sure. Next, we have Graham Staplehurst and his article on Traveler. And again, this is his Herald's College. It's the kind of thing that your character during the creation phase, that could be a place that they go and certain skills that they learn. Okay, here is our trap. It's actually two ideas for trap. Barry Baker has this drawing up here at the top. I'll show it to you. And the idea here is that you're coming in from the left, and you come into this corridor, and there's all kinds of debris and so forth. So basically, you can't see the floor very well. And he says on his dungeon on the door, there's actually a warning in Elvish that says, "Beware lest you spring to your death." Okay. So you got this hallway with about 6 inches of goop, just various types of debris. So basically, you can't see very well. As you walk along, you'll see at the bottom there is this wooden ledge or trapdoor or something like that you can step onto, right? You'll see a similar wooden section hanging from the ceiling with a piece of frayed rope. And so basically, the characters get sort of warned that maybe something is going on. If you step onto and put weight onto the bottom, there are hinges, there's a spring, and it will pop up and flip you, and you will flip into those spikes, and you'll be impaled on there and take 5d10 damage. And then you'll notice all the bones of dead people that are laying right below you. So you might try to get across, and you might try to grab that rope and swing, and there's a chance that that's going to break, and when you have any kind of a weight on it, and then you fall, you jump up and you grab the rope and try and swing, it breaks, you fall, hit the bottom wooden panel, then you get flipped up and slammed into the spikes. So I think you'd have to give some characters the opportunity to do some creative things here. Players are always going to come up with creative ways to try and solve the trap, so don't be overly insistent that no matter what they do, they get flipped into the spikes, right? But if they're silly and they just sort of walk across it, then they certainly should. The second idea, for which there is no drawing, is you go into this room, and there are all these trophies, which are just heads of any kind of creature out of the monster manual. And if you get sort of overly curious and you touch something, then the wall will sort of dissipate, and the entire monster is there behind the wall, and it'll come out and attack you. I have a couple other ideas for that. One, basically just 2 ogre heads with a plaque in between them, and there, if you come over and touch anything, they come off and come after you. Maybe there's something like an egg or a diamond or something there that will attract your attention. The idea is to entice the characters, right, the players, to send their characters over and touch and interact with this stuff, and then let these things come out from there. There's another one where it's a ledge with a gem, and over it is a Medusa head. Her eyes are shut, and if you get over there close to it, or maybe if you touch the gem, something, her eyes open, and her petrification ability is enacted on whatever guy's over there trying to do that. So, anyway, some good ideas, I think. This is just a fiction story. It's a sad little story about this samurai comes to this kingdom, his beautiful daughter. The guy pledges the daughter's hand in marriage. Turns out, of course, she's in love with this soldier in the dad's army. So the guy goes to sees her. She tells him she has to get married to the guy who's come to visit with his army. They're both sad. So the guy goes off and finds a ninja to kill the guy, and they have some discussion about how the visiting soldier, the leader of the visiting soldiers, is like the super amazing swordsman. So they go to try and kill him. He awakens before they can get in the room. He comes out, he attacks them, he basically injures the young man who is in love with the woman, but the ninja is too talented and he kills the guy. But then he sees the guy who was supposed to pay him and realizes he's not going to pay him either, so he cuts off his head, maybe to keep him from talking about having hired the ninja. I don't know. And that's the end of the story. So, like I said, it's kind of a sad story. Okay, so here's a modest proposal, Patrick Fama, and he's discussing the disconnect between fantasy role-playing and postal games. He says, in fact, our own Steve Norledge left us because he became involved in postal gaming and didn't really want to play or work on a fanzine connected to fantasy role-playing games. They bemoan the fact that the postal people are sort of snobs. They're like, hey, we play mature games. That fantasy role-playing stuff is increasingly seen as something that's for children, and he's hoping that they could figure out a way to get those two groups reintegrated so that they support each other, that their zines cover each other, because they see it, there's sort of more things that unite us than divide us, kind of is his theory. Okay, this is... I had good hopes for this one based on this cool artwork at the beginning. It's not bad. It is the definition, however, of linear. You go to this tower. This guy's developed this magical book. And the theory is that in this kingdom, he's so powerful, his soldiers have nothing to do. And so they would go in this room, use this enchanted book to give themselves something to do when they're bored. So for whatever reason, your party decides to do that. They shut the door. You touch the book. This dust comes out. You sort of fall asleep or become foggy-headed, and you wake up in this alternate dimension. There's like dense fog off to either side, and you're on a yellow brick road. I told you it's linear, and you walk along, and there'll be an encounter that will appear out of the fog, and you basically go over. You have to go over. You do that encounter. When you finish it, the yellow brick road will reappear, and you walk again. And it is basically, you will do this, then you will do this, and it's your only path. There is one path forward. If you try to go off the path randomly into the fog, they said it feels like rubber, so you can't really push through. And once you start one of these little encounters, your only option is to finish it successfully, or you end up stuck here forever. Oh, and so there's no map, there's no drawing, everything is just described. But that was kind of interesting, I thought, the sort of narrative way he describes each of these encounters. A lot of them are drawn from literature, ideas, that are very obvious where they came from. I think there's some stuff from Alice in Wonderland. There's 3 trolls that kind of reminded me of the Goldilocks story. Anyway, it would not be something I would put into my probably standard campaign. I might do it as a one-off, or where I told the players we're going to do something completely different tonight. But that was okay. It was Noel Froggatt's design. Okay, more on the moral majority. And there's this article, you can't see it very well, that's cut from a newspaper. talking about the effects of D&D on, especially on younger people, but basically on bringing demons into the world. And so I thought the article was actually pretty interesting, so I wanted to read just a little bit of it to you. You get older, you got to wear these glasses sometimes when you want to read something, right? All right. So there's this guy in here who is a Baptist preacher, and he says, I see these things, it's basically connecting you to Satanism. And he says, I see the sign, it's a known sign of Satanism. In certain circles, I see a goat head. Other black magic symbols are frequently used. And then this guy in the UK basically says, well, that's kind of rubbish. He says, saying that D&D leads children to the occult practice is a bit like saying that children playing Monopoly turns children into the Rashomons. These games don't have really any effect on a child's development one way or the other. Child psychologist at Birmingham University says that this sort of fears that might be aroused by the D&D game are part of the normal experience of growing up. It may generate ideas and fears that lead to nightmares or anxieties, but then so do certain novels that a kid might read. And then we get back to the preacher who says, the problem with the game is that it embraces demons. They are not fantasy, they are fact. And so I think just like today, you see these things where, sometimes there's just no talking to people. I believe what I believe, and that's what I believe. But in any event, he talks about being a little worried here about whether or not these things are going to, sort of this movement would crop up in the UK. I don't think it, from my understanding back in the day, I don't think it particularly ever does. Then we have the letters column. They cover a number of issues. They respond to stuff that's been in earlier fanzines. The thing, again, I find interesting is they print the letter and then they immediately print their reply to the letter. And I don't want to say it's antagonistic, but it's a little bit argumentative. Let's just say that, right? We've got an article here about their comment about how, like, Gary Gygax basically was the only person, maybe Games Workshop made money and nobody else really was making a fair amount of money in this field. Talk about, remember the Game Center store, a series of stores that collapsed, and this guy's got his theory about what bad business is basically what did that. Somebody here talking about the moral majority article and basically saying we don't think we're going to have that issue in the UK. Somebody complaining they don't like the Traveler stuff, especially they don't like Graham's article. They just said they just don't, for whatever reason, they're talking about specifics of Traveler and like he doesn't have it placed correctly. I don't know that we need another one of these things, that kind of stuff. Brian Ansell writes in, you may remember him from his work in the fantasy field, and he's at Citadel, and he's responding to he saw it as a complaint that their stuff was more expensive. He's like, look, I'm running a real company with employees and I got to pay people. And so, yeah, we got to make money. Our figures might be a little more expensive. They sort of apologize for that and say, look, they are more expensive. That's what we said. They are more expensive. We didn't say they were bad figures. We didn't say they weren't worth it. But the simple fact is some people maybe would rather have, 3 lower quality figures than one fancy Citadel figure. Which, I think is fair. And then we got somebody here complaining about the fact that we don't have too many familiar names, he says. And they're sort of like, look, dude, we print everything we get, right, if it's any good. And he said it's not our fault that the same people send stuff in. And even when we try and encourage letters or feedback from the people that subscribe, we don't really get much in terms of a response. This was an interesting little tidbit here. So this is written at the time of issue number 5. He says, here's what's disturbing. We have 25 subscribers. So that sort of gives you, that was what I wanted to share for context. We have 25 subscribers, only 4 or 5 replied when we asked them for letters. So, here these guys are, at that point, having put out 4 issues, and they only have 25 subscribers. So, it's, it was tough going for these guys in the fanzines. Only a couple of folks, I think, got really anything substantial in terms of a subscriber base. All right, this is a kind of an odd article. and I think Hudson Shaw is writing this, and he's explaining the presence of monsters in illustrated comics like Popeye and things like that. So he starts like this sort of a historical survey article, starts back in the early 1900s, talks about different things, something called, Thimble Theater, a lot of stuff about Popeye and different things, that monsters, if you will, that showed up in there, and sort of says there's basically no longer a presence of sort of fantastical monsters that are added into people's comic illustrations anymore. Here is Dave Hawkes, the Quasits and Quasars editor, article on starting out his campaign. And so this is part number 2. And he says, sort of, where do you start them out, right? He says, I don't like the whole tavern business. I think you have to find a place that's a common place for them to be. But he said, I don't like the tavern. I don't like a big city. And so he has started people out in Thorpe, the Thorpe of Little Goston. And this is his little tiny town. And he said, there's something interesting going on. So right away, sooner or later, you're going to get embroiled in this. And what it is, the men in this town have become devoted to some type of a demon cult. I think he got it from the Melnibonian gods in Deities and Demigods book that he had. So he's found this chaotic deity. They want sacrifices of women. And so at some points you may notice that there are basically no women left in this town, only men. The first house you come to, if you stop in, is a woman who will basically scream to you that they're trying to get me, they're trying to kill me, that kind of thing. She'll seem crazy, so you probably discount her even though she's actually telling you the truth. But as you get further in, basically you'll meet different people in here. All seem fairly violently disposed to fight with you if you get near their house or whatever, probably because they don't want you to discover whatever it is that they've been doing lately. But here's the little town, and that's it. This is how he sort of starts you off. And I think his theory is that one way or another you're going to sort of be forced into learning what's going on here. And hopefully, feeling heroic, you might decide to do something about it. I think one or two of the homes has some women that have been captured, maybe slave girls that have been purchased, or other women from town who've been sort of restrained and stuck in a basement or a closet or whatever until they can get around to sacrificing them. Oh, here's the blow view of the town. Again, just a little town. Like you said, you're not going to stay here. This is not going to be your home base. This is how he liked to get his players started, though. Then we have the article on miniatures. And again, these are Citadel miniatures. And last time they had photographs, and they complained a little bit in their writing about the fact that Citadel used drawings. And here they are with drawings because they said, as you saw, our photographs did not reproduce very well. And so we get it. They also say that we think Citadel could probably solve this problem because they have a lot more money than we do. Here are their drawings. These are drawings of Citadel miniatures that were recently being released. I'll get out of the way. Okay, let's take a look at some of the artwork that's in here, because the art, always one of my favorite things to look at, and it's really good this time. So this is Hudson Shaw. I think his art is pretty recognizable. He has a certain style, and he's got this crazy looking little guy who's over in the sci-fi section, and then a couple of just little random drawings as well. These the last couple come from the adventure. Here's his duck. He and Jaquays, hopefully they were friends because they both had a fondness for drawing ducks. And then this is from the article that Hudson wrote about monsters that appeared in illustrations, and this creature, I guess you'd say, on the left is his redrawing of a monster that appeared, I think, in a Popeye comic, if I remember that correctly, which is something you wouldn't see today. Again, we got a little duck down there. Why not? Here are a couple more illustrations. Oops, clean that up. We've got some sci-fi stuff. We've got the samurai and the ninja that kills the samurai, and then this is from the adventure. Little bugbear. I don't know what that little monkey guy is doing. And this is our rear cover, and the rear cover is done by Simon Colby, and it's sort of got a bit of a sci-fi theme to it. This is a slightly closer view of that. And again, to their credit, these guys are all about doing stuff beyond Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so that's been their goal from the very beginning. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you are enjoying our channel and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might be interested in what we're doing, please send them our way. I hope they will be subscribers as well. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.